So my name is Nickie Lewis, and I started building art with sticks when it was COVID times, and I've done art my whole life in one capacity or another. And during COVID, I had kind of a crisis of conscience about the fact that I was making mostly electronic art, and electronics are actually very wasteful. And so I started wondering if I could make art that turned back into what it was when it started. So I found that cedar sticks were super malleable and I could create shapes and creatures with them. And I went to the forest and said I was going to make a unicorn. And that's how I got started. I'm very inspired by any sort of art that makes me wonder how someone did it, or it kind of hits that childlike wonder trigger in some way. So anything like that makes me super inspired. And I think my art, I strive to make art that does that for people. So I enjoy making creatures that people have never really seen before, or if they have, I like to twist them in a way that maybe is outside of what they would normally imagine. Yeah, I just like to, I like to hit that soft spot for people, the imagination soft spot that a lot of, especially adults, forget that they have. The whole journey was inspired by willow weavers in the UK. So there's some beautiful examples of huge sculptures made out of willow. But my favorite is an artist, she goes by Anna and the Willow on Instagram, and she created this beautiful feminine figure made out of willow with a dress and a bow and arrow, and she plopped her down in the forest. And that was kind of my starting point where I said, I need to learn how to do this. And then I discovered that willow is a very finicky material to work with. You have to soak it 1 day for every foot of length. And because I like to build big, it would have taken me days before I could start building. So, so that's why I found sticks instead. Yeah, I think actually when I very first started, I wanted to make more fantasy-based creatures. So when I started with unicorns and dragons and trolls. And a big part of that was because it's so childlike and fun, and yet I did them at a scale that made adults feel like children again. But also, I'm not a classically trained sculptor. So for me to build fantasy-based, if I didn't get proportions right, or I didn't make it look right, you can't say that about fantasy creatures because they don't exist. So that's how I got started, was building these creatures that you can't tell me I did it wrong because they don't exist. And then I've since sort of transitioned into trying to make more realistic sculptures. And then I've quickly realized that even realistic sculptures they're not for me, for mostly that reason, that people can sort of pick it apart if they want to, but more so that it questions what is something supposed to look like, right? So I enjoy playing with proportions now, and I really embrace it as opposed to making it look perfect. Well, one of the more logistical reasons that I build big is because the sticks don't bend very small. So it's really hard to build tiny, and it's fairly easy to build big. And once you start building big, it's also, you get to the fun part quicker. When you build smaller, you have to build more armature, and when you build big, you can basically build a bigger armature, but because you're building big, it's going to stand up by itself because it's big. So there's a lot less logistical thinking and more art fun building. But from a artistic side of things, I also think there's something really powerful about having something that is on a scale that most people don't get to encounter. Right? When a grown human gets to stand next to a 20-foot dragon, you get to feel like that little kid at the playground again, and I think that's super fun. So, yeah. So quantum entanglement is the idea that we can affect our surroundings and vice versa. And so this idea that scientists actually did a whole study on plants, and they went into this forest and they studied this forest, and they found that people who went into the forest regularly, the trees responded differently to than people who were just coming in once. So the trees actually know us, which I think is fascinating to me. So this connection of nature connecting to us, and then us either accepting that connection or ignoring it, right? So I really enjoy, I think that might be why I do all of the nature-based animals, because I think it's just, we don't pay enough attention to the world around us, and animals are a huge part of the ecosystem that, that are, they get looked at as cute, or they get, they get mistreated. So I think it's important that we start thinking differently about how we affect the world and vice versa, right? Yeah, I think impermanence is a really big part of my work. And I think it's also, when I do a lot of work with kids, it's something we talk about a lot, because kids get very upset at the idea that they're not going to be around forever and that they might break and things like that. And so we do a lot of talking about, it's all, ecosystems are a thing, right? And everything in our world has its purpose and its place, and my art is meant to kind of emulate that, right? It's only going to be around for a little while, and it makes it more magical. You got to see it while it was around, or you didn't. And I really respect the materials too. So if I have a sculpture that doesn't have a home and it just sits in my yard for a little while and the birds kind of pick it apart until the twine is completely gone, I'll take the sticks and I'll remake it into something new. Yeah, so when I initially started, I started building basically on site. And when you build on site somewhere, you actually have the ability to just basically pile a bunch of stuff on top of each other, and then you can weave and sculpt on top of that. So it's actually much easier to just build where it's going to live forever. But when I started building sculptures that had to move around, I had to build armature. And I didn't realize till I'd been building for about 2 years that the willow weavers I was inspired by were actually using steel frames underneath their work. So I have always built my armature just out of the same sticks that I build everything else out of, which I now am pretty proud of, because it means that my work is still totally, like, could go in the compost bin and that would be fine. But it definitely limits me as to what I can do. So this sculpture that I'm currently exhibiting, I did actually add a little bit of metal framework into it, just from some recycled table legs, and that gave it enough that I could kind of play with something I wouldn't normally be able to get, which is a little bit more movement and some little gravity-defying elements. But so a learning curve, yes, for sure. I've had to learn that I have to engineer some things if I wanted to stand up properly. The biggest thing I want people to feel when they experience my art or see it for the first time is I want them to smile. I really hope that that's the first instinct, is to just get a little smirk. And if it doesn't make you smirk and have a little joyful moment, then hopefully it has you at least go, how did that happen? How was this created? Yeah, so it just, the joy and wonder, I think, are the biggest pieces of what I want people to come away with. And then in the deeper meaning, if they get the idea that we are connected to nature and that our impact on nature is real, that would be great as well. But for my art, I'll take whatever people want to get from it at the end of the day.